You have just read about zones of proximal knowledge and scaffolding. As you watch this video, keep the following questions in the back of your mind. How is the image of a scaffold used to describe zones of proximal knowledge? How often do I see examples of scaffolding in everyday life? Learning a new concept or skill is a great achievement, but we can't achieve everything on our own. Sometimes we don't have the right prior knowledge or mental tools to figure out a piece of the puzzle. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. Maybe we don't even know where to start looking for the answer. Let's say, for example, you're trying to teach your children how to write in cursive. Most of your students are picking it up just fine, but one or two students seem to be having trouble achieving this skill, and they can't seem to figure out why. Luckily, you as a teacher can look at things like their finger placement, the angle of their pencil, and other things that your students probably don't even realize are influencing the way they write. With a few quick corrections and a piece of advice, you are able to help them fix their approach to writing cursive. Now, the next time they try to write in cursive, they won't need your help. They will be able to do it all on their own. In other words, you have just given your students the scaffolding they need in order to build their success. And even once you take that scaffold away, their success will keep standing. Scaffolds are often used in real life when buildings are being repaired or constructed. They are temporary structures that go on the outside of buildings and give workers the foothold they need in order to successfully work on the building. Scaffolding as a teaching method is very similar. You are temporarily giving your students as much needed foothold to help them attain mastery of the subject. The next time students try to engage with the subject, they'll be able to do it successfully on their own. Much like when construction workers remove the scaffolding from a building, it continues to stand all on its own. Scaffolding is an effective method for helping students move forward with their learning. This relates to a concept called the zone of proximal development. Basically, the zone of proximal development is when you take the skills or knowledge that your student already possesses and push them one step further. For anyone who has ever tried lifting weights at the gym, you are probably very familiar with this concept. Imagine that you are able to lift 10 pounds with your right hand. 10 pounds is your absolute limit. You can't lift a single pound more. In this case, your zone of proximal development would be lifting 11 pounds. It's just one step further. The problem is, how do you get from 10 to 11 pounds when you've already tried everything? This is where scaffolding comes in. In this case, your trainer at the gym might watch what you're doing and make a few recommendations to the way you are standing or holding the weight in your hand. They might even use one finger to help you lift those 11 pounds. And once you've managed to lift those 11 pounds up with your trainer's help, your muscles will respond by getting stronger, and you'll be able to lift them all on your own next time. Before long, your zone of proximal development will be to lift 12 pounds. You want to use scaffolding in the classroom when introducing students to a new concept, especially when you notice students struggling to grasp that concept. There are 3 main steps to using scaffolding effectively. First, identify what your student already knows. This is important for figuring out what their zone of proximal knowledge is, because you can't figure out their proximal knowledge unless you know their current knowledge. Going back to our gym example, this is like the trainer asking you how much weight you are currently able to lift, so they can figure out what your next goal should be. Next, help guide your students using scaffolding to help them get from their current knowledge to the knowledge they should have by the end of the class. Give words of advice and encouragement. Help diagnose where they are going wrong or the mistake they are making, and give them a few tips on how to correct it. Note that you are trying to move students from their current knowledge to their zones of proximal knowledge. A gym trainer would not see someone struggling to lift 10 pounds and immediately try to get them to lift a 50-pound weight. So make sure that your curriculum and lesson is planned in such a way that you're not expecting too much of your students. If you see it's impossible for your students to learn the required concept by the end of the class, try to figure out why this is the case. Either give them extra work or extra tutoring, or consider revisiting your curriculum. You may be expecting too much. Finally, once students have arrived in their zone of proximal knowledge, help them connect this new knowledge to what they already know. A trainer might point out how lifting a weight with your arms is similar and different to lifting it with your legs. A math teacher might look at how a division problem is different from and similar to a multiplication problem that the students have already learned. You are probably teaching this particular lesson as part of a larger unit, so make sure your students are able to see the connections clearly in their mind. Otherwise, they might not know what to do with the skill once they have learned it. So much of scaffolding relies on your ability to understand why your students are having problems, so you can give them advice on how to correct these problems. And this isn't always easy to do. You might, however, consider relying on other students who have successfully learned the new concept to coach the students who are having trouble. They will probably have a better understanding of why some students are having trouble with the concept, because they have just gone through the process of learning it as well. And in a classroom with a lot of different students, this can help take some of the burden off you to be everyone's scaffold. Let's review. In this lesson, you learned about scaffolding. You learned that scaffolding is a way to use advice, coaching, mentoring, and encouragement to help give your students the extra push they need to learn something they may otherwise not be able to master on their own. You learned that scaffolding helps students who are in their zone of proximal development, or the zone where they are trying to master skills they cannot master on their own. You learned 3 steps to implementing scaffolding in your classroom. First, identify what your student already knows. Second, give words of advice and encouragement to help them move forward. Third, once your student has successfully mastered the concept with your help, tie that concept back to prior knowledge. Finally, you learn that other students can serve as great scaffolds in the classroom as well. Now is a good time to answer the questions you were asked at the beginning of this video.